Hey beautiful mama and gorgeous blossoming baby bump. It's Chrissi here joining you this evening from the Costa Rican jungle. And today I really wanted to talk about why I believe natural childbirth to be the best possible way that we can birth our babies. So first I just want to define what I mean by natural childbirth. So for me, that means it's vaginal. And it means that there are no interventions and no medications present, so it's 100% natural as Mother Nature intended. And I've got about 6 reasons why I think natural childbirth is like the best method to go. But I just wanted to start this video by saying this isn't how I always felt. 11 and a half years ago, just before giving birth to my first, I was absolutely terrified of the mere suggestion of a natural childbirth because I thought it was really barbaric and torturous and a very antiquated way of doing things when we had modern science to help us. So there was just no way that I was even going to humour the idea of going through any pain because I'm not a martyr. And I also thought it wasn't ideal for the baby either to be pushed through my body. So I just thought, airlift my baby out and job done, right? And then I met this amazing doula at a pregnancy yoga class who kind of changed my whole perspective on things slowly. Wasn't straight away, it would have been too much straight away, but she sowed a few seeds, and as I got to know her more, I was just exposed to a whole new ideology. So let me share some of that with you. So number 1 reason that natural childbirth is amazing is because we are designed to do it. We have a genetic blueprint that has basically ensured the human race isn't extinct. We have done this thing of birthing for 300,000 years. So, you know, it'd be pretty arrogant to assume that a medical procedure can trump that. Because let's be honest, if we couldn't birth our babies, if we were flawed, like the medical system often tries to claim that we are, then we wouldn't be here. And it's the same with any other species that you look outside. I mean, I live in the jungle in Costa Rica, so you know, there's lots of animals out there, from monkeys to iguanas to all kinds of crazy things. They wouldn't be here if they couldn't reproduce. And nor would we, frankly. C-sections have only been around for about 60 years, and even then they were a bit dicey when they started. And, you know, that's not how we're designed to give birth. So let's have a little bit of respect for the fact that we have this genetic blueprint and that we are not flawed. And actually what is flawed is the way that we're being educated, if that's the right term, or not educated about how we are supposed to give birth, what the environment's meant to be like, and what the preparation is meant to be like, and how we can basically assist our bodies to do it the best possible way. Because fear and things like that inhibit the whole process. And that brings me on to point 2. The other thing that inhibits the whole process is exactly the things that are meant to help us, such as interventions and medications. So let me start by explaining what I mean by interventions. Interventions can be as innocent sounding as merely checking how dilated you are through a vaginal examination, okay? When my doula told me that I could say no, that I could turn down the offer of being examined to see how dilated it was, I just felt so empowered and happy because I was like, yeah, really, I don't want that. I don't want people that I don't even know, who are strangers, going up there with their gloved hands. It makes me feel freaked out and restricted, and I can feel my whole body kind of going, no, please don't do that. I mean, we all know how it feels just going for a smear test. It's not a pleasant experience. So you don't need to do that. I never let anyone do that to me with all 5 of my births. Another innocent sounding thing is breaking the waters. Also not so innocent and completely unnecessary. A lot of the time, the reason they give you for doing that is because they say it will speed up labour because it releases more oxytocin. But they don't tell you that there's other ways of releasing oxytocin in a much more powerful way and a much less invasive way, such as just having a cuddle or a kiss with your partner, or just feeling safe in your environment. And by breaking the waters, no one really discusses through the risk factors, of which there are quite a few. So for example, you're much more likely to have infections. It takes the whole buoyancy out of everything. So it can sometimes cause the umbilical cord to prolapse, and the baby can then be squashing the cord, which is an emergency situation because that's restricted the oxygen supply to the baby, right? So why on earth would you put yourself in that kind of situation? And if that doesn't happen, by taking the buoyancy out of it, the baby actually will be under a lot more distress because it will feel the contractions a lot more powerfully. Now, personally, I've had 2 babies where the waters did break. Like with one baby 8 hours before he was born, and with another baby 24 hours before, which was a whole pickle in itself because they really wanted to induce me then. But with 3 babies, my waters didn't break until literally minutes before the baby was born. And that's actually really good for them because everything's buoyant and floating around, so they can't feel the contractions, they don't get distressed as much. The umbilical cord is completely intact, not compromised, not being pinched, because it's not, banging against your pelvic floor and the baby's head. So it's actually a really much better way to have everything, is to have your waters intact. Another intervention would be performing an episiotomy, which often in cultures where I am, like for now example, they just do it standard practice. And it's basically just cutting the lady's vagina down to the anus to open her up more. Now that is a barbaric procedure, which is extremely painful post-birth, and indeed can cause neurological pain for the entirety of the woman's life. Can cause problems with your pelvic floor, can cause problems with your sex life. So why do that to yourself? It's hideous. And when I talk about medications, I'm talking predominantly about Pitocin, which is synthetic oxytocin, which is the hormone of love and the hormone that actually, starts labour. But Pitocin, being synthetic when it's administered, is so much more aggressive than what our body would naturally give out with oxytocin. And it can cause really massive surges and contractions to the point where the pain is unbearable and can even cause, in some poor women's cases, uterine ruptures, which would never ever happen. It's never been reported as happening if it's just your normal hormones and the normal chemistry. So when you've administered Pitocin, which is to induce labour or speed it up, most times women can't cope with the pain and they have to have an epidural. And the effect of the epidural is that then you are incapacitated. You have to lie on your back, you can't move around as much, which causes a whole host of other problems, which means you can't have the dance with your baby of trying to get into the right position, which may well mean because the baby is not in the right position, it gets stuck, which will then open up a whole can of worms of needing maybe a ventouse or a forceps to extract the baby, or an emergency C-section to extract the baby, who is now under a lot of distress with these massive contractions. Epidurals and Pitocin, but epidurals mainly, can also cause respiratory problems for the baby and neurological problems. And it's ironic, isn't it, that all throughout pregnancy we're told not to take drugs, nothing more than a paracetamol because it's harmful to the baby. But at time of delivering the baby, we can hammer it with all these drugs. It's just nonsensical, it's crazy. But the other thing I just wanted to come back to with the whole epidural thing is, okay, so imagine you're lying on your back, and a good analogy here is could you pass the stool lying on your back comfortably? No, gravity is not helping you. It's ludicrous. The only position that's bad for labour is the one where you're lying on your back like a beetle, because your pelvis is the most narrow and the most restricted, and gravity is not working with you, and it's only good for, guess who? The physician, because he can see, or she. It's not good for you or the baby though, not at all. And when it comes to other positions, if you're not drugged up and you can move around freely, you and the baby do a kind of dance to get the baby out. You can move freely, you can help your baby, because your baby also has this incredible intelligence of how to get down the birth canal. And even though you may not cognitively understand why you want to get in a certain position, like you may want to get on all fours all of a sudden, or you may want to just hold onto something up high because you need to stretch because your baby's up here and stretching itself, or you may want to kind of lean back but still be in an uprightish position, or whatever. You may want to do a figure of 8 to kind of help. I started doing that with one of my babies who took 44 hours to come out, and it turns out he's back to back. I didn't know that but my body did, because it was doing all this to try and get more comfortable. And the only reason we know he was back to back is because he had this big ridge across his forehead, which was my pelvis, essentially, that he was sort of banging into for so long. Now, if I'd been in a hospital, because I was at home with him, I would have probably had an emergency C-section with him, because they wouldn't have allowed the labour to go on so long. And that's the other thing I wanted to say. There is no linear perfect time for labour. I've had births that have been as long as 44 hours, 33 hours, and some that have lasted 7 hours. It just takes as long as it takes, okay? It takes as long as it takes for the baby to be in the ideal position, for you to be as relaxed as you need to be. It's not something that we should be monitoring with a graph or a monitor and trying to control. It's absolutely ludicrous. Mother Nature is perfect in her design, and it will take as long as it takes. But saying that, I now have a lot of tools and techniques that can help relax you and can help overcome a lot of different fears and issues to speed the process up, to help it along in a natural way. But that's another kind of topic. Yeah, sorry, I've kind of, what have I done? I've lost my way, sorry. Right, so that was my second point. Medications and interventions are pretty bad. And if you can avoid them, why on earth would you put yourself in those compromising positions? The third reason natural childbirth is amazing is because your recovery is really quick. It's so surprising to women that haven't had a natural childbirth, that women that have are walking around within minutes of giving birth. They're able to, step out of their birthing pool, go to the toilet, have a shower, feed the baby, birth the placenta, welcome the other children into the room. Like, you feel great and you're flying high. I mean, those hormones that haven't been interfered with, that haven't had their delicate balance interrupted, where it's like just a perfect symphony of hormones working in harmony and synergistically and all that, if they haven't been butchered by an epidural, by Pitocin, you are just in euphoria and bliss, and everything's working so well, and the oxytocin's pumping, and then the placenta is born without any troubles, and you're less prone to hemorrhaging, and your recovery is so much better than if you were to go for the other options. Fourthly, for the baby, natural childbirth, and this is what really swayed me when I heard this from the doula, it's so much better to be born vaginally. And I wouldn't have believed that originally, because I thought, oh my gosh, how traumatic to be born through another person's body. But honestly, again, Mother Nature has done it all perfectly. Firstly, you have, when the baby comes out through the vagina, its kind of chest and everything is squeezed. So all the mucus that's on your baby's lungs when it's in utero is basically squeezed out of it. And a few hours after it's born, it coughs up this mucus, which, by the way, doesn't mean your baby's dying. I thought it did when I had my first Luca, and no one told me that there was going to be this like mucus vomit thing. But it's totally natural, and it means that they're going to be far less prone to respiratory infections, which is brilliant. And the other reason being born through the vagina is much better is because the baby is exposed to loads of bacteria, vaginal bacteria and even more sort of anal bacteria and all that. So the likelihood of the baby getting any kind of infection is far less. Babies are born, or in the womb, they're sterile. They don't have any of their own bacteria. So being born vaginally just colonizes them with all these good bacteria, so that they're far less prone to any kind of infection, but especially things like ear infections, eye infections, and why would you not do that for them? It's brilliant. They've even started swabbing babies that are born by C-sections with the mother's secretions, the vaginal secretions, and putting it in their mouth to try and give them the same level of immunity, because a C-section baby takes 6 months of life to get to the same level of immunity as a vaginally born baby. So there is another reason. What else do I want to say? Oh, and the baby's not drugged. So guess what? The baby is alert when it's born. It can do eye-to-eye contact. It can bond with mummy better, and it can breastfeed brilliantly. Surprisingly, if your baby is drugged, it can't breastfeed very well. It doesn't know what the hell's going on, and the bonding takes a while as well. You can also care much better for your baby, because if you haven't had your breast milk infected basically with drugs, you can feed your baby and you can carry your baby and you can walk with your baby, because you don't have the problems that you might have had otherwise. You're going to be less prone to tearing. You're going to be less prone to having hemorrhoids. You're going to be less prone to any kind of pelvic floor problems like vaginal prolapse, rectal prolapse, even bladder prolapse, because you could feel everything when you were giving birth. So you knew when to push. You knew not to do it, basically. I never had to actively push because my body just did it. It's called the fetal ejection reflex. And once you're fully dilated, don't need anyone to tell you, your body just knows, and it will just do this bearing down pressure, and there's just no getting out of it. You just have to surrender and release and go with it. And within 2 to 3 pushes of your body doing it, the baby's out. So all this stuff when you see on TV that people going push, push, push and forcing you to do it, utter rubbish. That doesn't need to happen. Those women are highly medicated and they're not in tune with the body and they can't feel anything. And because of that, they are going to tear, they're going to have hemorrhoids, and their pelvic floors are going to be bloody destroyed. So don't do it. Icing on the cake for me is reason number 6. And this is just something really, really close to my heart. Discovering your divine feminine power through childbirth is such an amazing opportunity that you genuinely, darling, do not want to rob yourself of. For me, it was like the first time I really had to lean into such incredible intensity, physical intensity, and even emotional intensity, to just surrender and trust and go with the flow and know that my body knew what it was doing. Because normally we're so in our minds and so cognitive that we think we can control everything. But if we let birth herself take over, it is just incredible. And it's incredibly humbling as well to just witness this strength and this power within you. So it's humbling and yet it's empowering at the same time, and you don't want to cheat yourself of that experience. You are left feeling euphoric, ecstatic, so respectful of your body and your baby, so respectful of life in general, and you're on this hormone high that, I kid you not, I have never felt anything like it. I love it so much that I would volunteer myself if I could to give birth for any of you and all of you, even though I know it's intense, because the power and the incredible gift you get afterwards is such a reward. It's just the most amazing feeling in the world. And I think I'm addicted. I really do. I think I'm addicted to it. I could do it all day long. After I give birth, I'm like, let's do that again, man. That was incredible. And I'm not trying to take away from its intensity. It is, you know, I'm not going to lie to you. It's very intense and very powerful, but you can so do it, you know. And that's what I mean. When you know that you can do that, it gives you the strength that you can tap into with any other challenge that you come across in your life. Be it, you know, baby tantrums or late nights with a baby teething, or an argument with your spouse, or financial problems. Everything becomes a bit like, I could do natural childbirth. I'm sure I can do this, you know. And yeah, that's just an incredible feeling, really honoring and seeing how amazing you are, because we all are capable of this. Believe me, if I can do it, you can definitely do it. Because like I said, I'm no martyr to pain, I'm not extra brave or anything. I just happened to meet the right woman at the right time and be open-minded and willing to learn, because I was so terrified of childbirth. I just thought, I've got to learn how to do this, because once I found out it was better for my baby, I was like, I've got to put my big girl pants on then and embrace this, right? But listen, if you are worried about the intensity of childbirth and it's in all its glory and in all its power, it's completely natural. And I'm not trying to take away from that, because I really, really know how you feel. But if you want to learn more about how to, you know, not just survive childbirth, but really thrive through it like I was able to 5 times, then, you know, please do reach out to me. Just leave me a little note here on the social media, or access me on my website, which I'll put a link to below. But, you know, this is my passion, and I'm here for you 100%, because I know how it can feel. But I really, really would love to take you from a place of feeling fearful, if indeed that's the case, to feeling the power. Because if I could do that transformation, so can you. And it's really, really worth embracing this opportunity. So anyway, I hope you found my top 6 reasons for choosing natural childbirth as the best possible way to give birth. I hope it's been a useful video, and I look forward to hearing your comments. Take care, darling. Sending you so much love.